Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you all, dear listeners of Radio Imaan and viewers of TV Imaan, broadcasting live from below the Uluguru Mountains and direct to your homes, whether it's through radio or through TV stations, TV sets. Today with me at the studio of TV Imaan, I have a guest. As you have been informed, we have a guest, and this is Brother Abu Ibrahim John Starling. And I will welcome him first to our studio. Brother Abu Ibrahim, welcome to TV Imaan and Radio Imaan here in Morogoro.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, mashallah. So, as it is a rule that we need to introduce ourselves, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, when he was speaking to Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, he said, Innani ana Allah, la ilaha illa ana, that I am, Allah, and there is no one worthy of worship except me. So this underlines the importance of introduction. So I'm going to introduce to you Brother Abu Ibrahim John Starling, who he is and what he is. He is none than John Starling, and that is his name. And most people think that a Muslim cannot be called John, but he is John Starling. Abu Ibrahim, that is kunya. He has been named after his son, Ibrahim, who is with him, but unfortunately he won't be with us here in the program.
He wants to be with us.
He wants to be with us? Inshallah, later on he may come and give even a word to young Muslim as well. So, Brother John Starling was born in North Carolina, USA, in the year 1979. He was born in a Christian family, father and mother Christian, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not blessed them to be Muslim, as our brother is a Muslim now. Professionally, Brother John Starling is a business management graduate from North Carolina State University. He graduated there in year 2001. And as far as religious knowledge is concerned, Brother John Starling is a graduate of Islamic University of Medina, Kharij in Medina, Al-Munawwara, with bachelor in Da'wah and Islamic theology, that is Tawheed, Da'wah and Tawheed. And currently, he is pursuing his Master of Arts in Islamic Studies at Islamic University of Minnesota, there in his home country, USA. So in short, that is Brother John Starling, Abu Ibrahim, with whom I'm going to have an interview, a tit-for-tat with him, and we will learn more about his life. And the topic today we are going to address is called My Journey to Islam. And I have hinted he is a special guest to us. Why is he special? Not because he is John Starling. He is special because of his journey. The journey is a very special one. Coming from a Christian family, father and mother being a Christian, and then embracing Islam, then pursuing knowledge, as Rasulullah said, that talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima. Seeking knowledge is compulsory to every Muslim, and in another riwayah, a Muslim man and a Muslim woman. So this is how special he is. Becoming a Muslim and then going up to university, Islamic University of Medina, and getting his degree there. We, born in Islam, haven't achieved that much. So he's special in that view. He's also special because he's coming from a country, a superpower in the world, a country which most Muslims view it as an Islamic country. They hate that country. Sometimes they curse that country, forgetting that there are millions of Muslim brothers and sisters living in America. So this is why talking to this brother is special to us. So Brother Abu Ibrahim John Starling, my first question to you is that here in our lives, we are in a journey. And everyone is trespassing this world. And everyone is writing his story in his journey or her journey. Can you please explain to our viewers TV Imaan, listeners of Radio Imaan. How did you get in touch with Islam? And then, after getting in touch with Islam, what made you become a Muslim? That's what attracted you to Islam. Yes, welcome.
Once again, thank you for having me here, and it is a great honor of mine to be having an interview with you on TV Imaan.
MashaAllah.
It is a pleasure, and I see it as a privilege to share some of my life and some of my thoughts with the audience. And hopefully we can take some benefit from the short moments that we have together during the duration of this program. So your question, of course, talking about my journey to Islam, as you mentioned, we're all on a journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we know it or we don't know it. From the great Imams of the past, such as Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, he said, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ أَيَّامٍ. You are nothing but a collection of days. إِذَا ذَهَبَ يَوْمْ ذَهَبَ بَعْضُكَ. When a day goes, a part of you goes with that day. There were other great statements that he said, much like you illustrated, that we have a story, so each day is like a page in our books. The first cover being our birth, and then the last cover, of course, being our death.
May Allah make it a blessing.
And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for success in this life and the next. And just like any book, any good book that you pick up, you'll find that the book is filled with a variety of themes. There's some action, there's some adventure, there's some romance, there's some tragedy, there's some mystery. All of our lives are filled with many things. And my life, alhamdulillah, up to this point has been very enriching. It's been very dynamic. And so to begin a summarized version of this journey, I can remember growing up in the household, as you mentioned, in a Christian household. My parents were traditionally Christian, from a line of Christian family members. Growing up in the church, going to Sunday school.
Exactly in which denomination, Christian denomination?
Well, I grew up in the Methodist church.
Methodist.
Yes, and we had a church that we went to as a family. We even had a family pew, you know, the seat. That was where our family sat. And that was dedicated, the window there, you know, they have the colorful stained glass windows, was dedicated to my grandfather, who passed away when my father was very young. So I grew up doing that for some time. I can't say that the duration of my childhood was very religious. It was more of a traditional practice of Christianity. We would go to church. It was a traditional thing to have Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas and Easter. But when I reached my early teenage years, the most difficult years for many people, we were in a transition in our lives. We moved around quite a bit. And at some point, I remember my parents giving me the freedom to choose whether I wanted to go to church or not. They encouraged me to go, of course, like most loving parents that have some religious values. They encouraged, if you want to go, you can go. If you don't want to go, we're not going to force you to go. And so I remember as a young teenager thinking, go to church or stay home and play. What would your kids do? Most kids would say, stay home and play.
Yes.
Let's stay home and play with the friends. And so I did that. It wasn't until around my college years. I was 19 years old. So this was about 1999. It was in 1999. I was a sophomore in college and business school. And I began to ponder over my journey after graduation. So what are you going to do after education?
Your career.
Your career. But not just the career. The career was there. What is it? What is going to be my purpose?
Purpose of life.
You know, I mean, the career thing it's all well and good, and it's very important to develop yourself to make a living.
Yeah, it's strange because I said, thinking about career, and said, yeah, it is there, then something else you're thinking about.
Of course, look.
Most of the people, especially in our countries and even in the Western, they think after graduation, most students think about their career only. And we are not thinking about career only, we're thinking about something else more.
Well, you have to consider all things, right?
Yeah,
the career is important, but like I said, career is there. And a person that has true faith in Allah, they'll know that something will be waiting for them. Allah is going to give them for them, and all of that's been already recorded, and it's been decreed for them. All they have to do is go through the steps and the process. But there's something much more important than the career, and that is the motivation and the purpose to do the best you can in the career and in your life in general. So I had a moment in my life in college where I began to ask myself, what is going to be my purpose? I was looking at if you look at business management from the return on investment, okay? You know, return on investment is what you're going to put in and what you're going to get out.
Yes, ROI, yeah.
Very good. And so there's obviously a monetary consideration, a monetary factor, how much money I'm going to make. But then there's also a personal level of happiness and joy that a person wants to get out of life. Money can't buy happiness.
Sure.
It can help. It can help along the way, but it can't buy happiness.
I wish many people they should know that.
Listen, we have United States, as you know, is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It has the most wealthy people. You'll find some of the wealthiest people, they're the most unhappy people. They have the money, they have the toys, they have the things, but the happiness, it's moments. It's only moments. The money can facilitate a little bit of that to make things easy, to make things fun. But if there's something missing, and this is a matter of the heart here, if the purpose of your life is missing, then you'll always be left unfulfilled. Right? This is a part of the natural, I believe, qualities of the heart, is that it needs to be filled with purpose. And so in college, I started to search for that purpose. I was already getting my education, and I was pretty confident. My father was a businessman. He had his own business, so I was confident that, hey, I'll go work for my father, and I'll make a living, and he does well for himself, so I'll do well for myself. So I wasn't so worried about that. I was more worried about having purpose and finding true joy and happiness. So where do you look to find these things? Most colleges, they don't teach you these things. Most universities, they don't tell you what's your purpose, what's the purpose of your life. They just give you a trade and a skill, what to do with your life.
Yeah.
And so my first inclination was to revert back to religion. Where else could I find such answers? So I reverted back to religion, a religion that I had almost abandoned. The idea of religion altogether, many people today have become dissatisfied with religion, partly because the religious leadership and management of the religion has not been going very well, and this is across the board around the world. But I went back to it anyway. I thought a lot of people, they find happiness and they find satisfaction in this, and so I started a journey of part-time research. So while I was doing my studies, I had a hobby of learning about religions to try and find this answer.
Different religions.
Different religions, yes. So I started with my religion, traditionally Christianity, doing kind of a brief survey of different religions. Not very scholarly. I was not digging deep into them. No, I didn't have the time. But I was looking. And I count myself very fortunate with this study. Because many people, and many of my classmates and university mates, they were very busy with other pursuits. They were distracted by the parties, college life, the fraternities, the clubs and organizations.
Life,
yeah, they had a very busy academic life and a very busy social life and a very busy life outside of university. And so there's a lot of things that can distract a person from even addressing the topic. Many people won't touch the topic at this age. I found myself personally. What's your purpose in life? Well, I'm just trying to have fun. I'm just living my life as I want. And so I myself wasn't involved in these things from a very young age. I wasn't involved in partying and clubbing. I wasn't involved with alcohol and drugs. I wasn't involved with these things at all. And so it was a huge distraction that was removed from my life. And so at this time of 18, 19, and 20, some of the most difficult years,
Yes, sure.
that wasn't even a part of my life to distract me. The downfall, if you would consider it such, was the fact that on the weekends, I was often alone. While my friends were off partying, I was stuck at the dormitory by myself.
That's the one which saved you then.
So this is where at the time I felt very isolated, but now I look back and I say, you know, this was my saving grace.
MashaAllah.
Because it gave me the time to think about and answer these questions. And so, like I said, I started. And I looked, as a brief survey, into Christianity, into Judaism. I looked at Buddhism, which has become very popular in the West. Very peaceful religion. Though we would see that also they have their own problems in their community, the Buddhists do.
Okay.
I looked into, believe it or not, Rastafarianism.
Oh.
Yes, you know Bob Marley.
Bob
And,
Marley,
yes.
Marcus Garvey and the rest.
Yes, because you know we're here in East Africa, very close to some of those movements in Ethiopia and Haile Selassie. And
The Rastafarianism.
yes, very, very much so. And the reason I looked into that was because I had a close friend, a very close friend who was also into Rastafarianism, and him and I spent a lot of time together discussing issues of faith and of God and the unseen world before we even knew about Islam. So I looked into that a little bit just out of curiosity. I looked into a couple of other Far Eastern religions. And believe it or not, I stumbled across Islam unintentionally by way of a college course that was being taught. I was enrolled in
your college?
In my college, yes. North Carolina State University has numerous faculties. And as a business student, our university didn't require us simply to study business, but they wanted us to take electives to get a well-rounded education. So some of my...
Your major, you have an elective.
I have my major, and then I have numerous electives to fulfill. And so it was a history class, History of America. Not just America, but African American history.
Okay.
Yes. So we're studying from around 1895 or so to present day. Okay? And I was one of the only white people in the class. African American history traditionally is not something that most Caucasian or white people enroll in, but I was there, and the teacher was also white. But she was very, very
considerate.
She was very well versed in the history.
Okay, knowledgeable.
Yes, very knowledgeable. That was her field of expertise, to my recollection. And so part of the reading syllabus was the history of Malcolm, the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Yes, who has rahimahullah, who has affected positively hundreds, if not thousands, of people. We could even say more than that, perhaps. In his journey, and that autobiography introduced me to Islam.
Allahu Akbar.
Yes.
Allahu Akbar.
Yes. So, you know, Malcolm X had a journey from the Nation of Islam, which was a very, very much black nationalistic movement in America that kind of used religion as a tool to empower the black community.
Resistance in some form.
Yes, of course. They were using religion as a tool to unite the black community in America and to empower them with faith, even though Nation of Islam, as is well known from their own publications, that the tenets of the faith do not agree with the actual tenets of Islam.
Yes.
Right.
Elijah Muhammad.
Of course. There's numerous things
By the
there.
way, at the moment, how is that, the Nation of Islam, the movement? Is still as strong as it was during Elijah Muhammad's time?
No, of course not. The Nation of Islam, though it is still present in the United States, and there is still some representation, they do still have a community, but by and large, the numbers, to my knowledge, are dwindling. Many of the members of the Nation of Islam back in the early founding years they began to convert into what is considered Orthodox Islam, right? Much like Malcolm X did.
Yeah.
And this is where I was introduced to the real Islam. I understood about Nation of Islam, and I even read a small booklet that was written by Elijah Muhammad. It was entitled How to Eat to Live, where he wrote a small book about diet and how important diet was and the things that you should eat and the things you should not eat. And that was just a little, it was kind of a secondary topic.
Okay.
But it was the process that I went through. And so when I read about Malcolm X and his journey to Islam, his pilgrimage to Mecca, the changing of his perception and his worldview, many of us are familiar with that story where he once indoctrinated by the Nation of Islam to really despise others, in particular white people, due to the mistreatment that the African Americans suffered throughout their history, which is something that still has a very, very strong impact today in our community in America. And if you watch the news, you can see.
You can see it.
And I know there's some questions about the election coming up and the new politics that are happening. You can see some of that, those feelings, those lingering feelings and beliefs.
Hasn't gone away yet.
They haven't gone away. We've managed to cover them in many regards in America, but the feelings, I believe, have been left to fester and have been left unaddressed by and large. And so we're seeing some of that come up in, just in small communities, and their numbers, obviously, I don't think represent the majority of Americans, but the odor of it is so vile.
Inshallah, Islam will remedy them all. Inshallah.
And so, basically, that class launched me into a much deeper research project into Islam. And so, there's a very interesting point to the story here, right? We can consider this.
Bring it.
Yes, we can. I would consider this the gold nugget of the story.
That's what I wanted.
Okay, because it is such a strange occurrence. I would never have imagined such a thing to happen. I used to hear strange stories about people accepting Islam and all the strange things that happened to them, coincidences and stuff, but this was mine.
Okay.
So I had a very close friend. Growing up, I should say in high school, we became very, very close in high school. We considered each other brothers.
Brothers.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together. We had many classes together. The only thing is, when we went off to school, to college, I went to one college and he went to one much further away.
Okay.
The distance was about 5 hours driving distance.
Yeah.
So
you got separated.
we were separated. And we tried our best to keep up with each other. We would call each other from time to time. During that time, email was becoming a little bit more accessible on college campus. Of course, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have iPads, we weren't able to back and forth all of the time, but we would be in communication every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so, just to catch up and keep in touch. So as I began my journey into learning more about Islam, I went, I believe we had a phone conversation.
Okay.
And I was talking to him on the phone, and I remember telling my friend, listen, I have to tell you that I've actually become very interested in Islam.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about becoming Muslim.
Okay.
And he said to me, you must be joking.
Why?
You're joking with me. And I said, no, man, I'm serious. And I told him a little bit about what I learned. I learned this and that and the other. And he said to me, you're joking with me because you just read my email. And I said, no, I haven't been to the computer lab today. He said, are you serious? I'm like, yes, I'm not joking with you, man. What are you talking about? What's going on? He said, put the phone down, go read your email, and then call me.
Okay.
So I went down. I had to go out of the dorm and across the yard and into the computer lab, and I had to wait in the line of students. And then I sit down and I open my email, and it says, John, this is from my friend, the same guy. I've become interested in becoming a Muslim.
SubhanAllah, just a coincidence?
Just like this. Just like this. Yeah. And
so when you started talking to him, he thought maybe you were already
He thought I was joking around with him.
Well, you didn't read his mail.
He thought I was joking.
Allah wanted both of you to be Muslims.
Okay. So I read the email and I was amazed. I was really blown away by this email. And so I rushed back to my dorm room. I picked up the phone and I called him, and we were speechless what to do. We were so excited. We began to share stories, what we learned, what we read. And it just so happened that at the time, he was also going through some transitional moments in his life, even as a college student. And he said, I want to come visit you. I'm going to take the weekend. I'm going to come to your university. I'm going to come visit you.
Which will give you ample time now
Yes.
to discuss.
Now we could be together, rejoined and enjoying not only our company, but our newfound passion of learning about Islam. And so certainly he came, and we spent the weekend together, and we talked about Islam, among other things. I mean, this wasn't like full-blown. This was like a part of our conversation, and everything else was what's going on and all of the things that we were into. So I remember taking him on a tour of the campus. And this is the second nugget here. The second coincidence. Things start to happen one after the other. Yes. Yes. It was amazing. It was amazing. So while I'm giving him a tour on campus, we're going past the administrative buildings. And all of a sudden, my friend starts to yell out someone's name. He's like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? And then the man, he turns around from entering one of the admin buildings, and he starts to call back, hey, how are you? So we go and meet, and it turns out that that man was the admissions officer of his university and had just been given a job at my university as an admissions officer.
That's great.
Yes. So he said to my friend, you should transfer here. I can help you.
Did he transfer to there?
He transferred.
Oh, Allah,
he transferred to my university, and it happened within weeks. It was made so easy. Everything was made so easy. It was just like so smooth, the transition. You know, because transferring from one university to the next can be tricky.
Always tricky.
Yeah, because there's things like financial aid, there's things like enrollment, transferring credits, all of these things. And the admissions officer, who happened to be very close with him, they had a good relationship, he helped him through the process. That's number two. Number three was when he moved. Yes.
Bring more.
I'm going to bring them. Okay. When he moved, now it was in the middle of the year. Okay, so first semester was over. Now second semester start. He's going to start in second semester. So the idea came in my mind. I said, listen, it's very unlikely. Let's go to the housing department and see if we can get a room together. I'll transfer from my dorm and we'll find an empty room. I said, it's not likely because everything's settled already. But let's just try it anyway. Things have been happening so easily. So we go to the housing department, and we're standing in there at the window. The lady behind the window says, how can I help you? And say, well, look, my friend just transferred here, and we're best friends from back home, and we'd love to room together. And she said, give me a minute, looks up on the system and says, there happens to be a room available.
Oh, mashallah.
There happens to be a room available. And it wasn't any room, but it was one of the better rooms.
Better rooms.
One of the better rooms. Right? So she made it happen within a matter of moments. She just went in there and said, okay, you transfer your room, get your belongings, and you move into the room, gather your key, turn on your old key, turn in your things, and your roommates.
Get the new key and go.
Yeah, go. So there we went to this very nice place now, a room of our own, with its own bathroom, own front door. It was the perfect place. And we spent our days together as students. Of course, he had his classes, I had mine. But in between, we would meet and we would discuss. And it was at this point that we actually started a trial run. Okay?
Trial run?
Yes. Man, you got to try. You got to try things. You know, when you buy something, when you buy something, you want to try it first. And if it's no good, you return it and get your money back.
So you were trying Islam?
We're going to try Islam out. Yeah. Guess what comes around the month of Ramadan?
Okay.
So we understood Ramadan, you fast. You fast in the morning, and you break your fast at night.
Yes.
So we said, well, let's make a pact, an agreement. We're going to try fasting to see if this is even realistic. Right?
Okay.
It seems hard.
Yeah, very hard.
Fasting.
Sure.
Americans, we don't know about fasting.
That's It's true.
Some religions, in Catholicism, they have Lent, which they have to fast. The fast is very different. They fast from something particular. They say, I'm not going to eat candy from candy or from bad language or something. So the idea of not eating or drinking all day seemed like an impossibility to someone that hadn't fasted a day in their life. So we started, and we continued. We were doing pretty good. The timing we weren't sure about, so we thought sunrise to sunset. So actually the sun was almost up, and we were quickly eating our breakfast. And then sun was setting way past Maghrib time, and we're still fasting. And this goes to show the importance of having a teacher. We were learning on our own. And so the self-taught is going to make mistakes along the way. Yes. Most of his
one is teaches only the book.
Then
mistakes.
His mistakes will be more than his correct assumptions or his answers.
Cool.
Anyway, that started us, and then we started the prayer. We figured we're doing the fasting. Let's start the prayer. We know 5 times throughout the day. And we were going off little booklets and websites and trying to figure out what is a takbir and what is rak'ah and what is sujood and what is qira'ah. All of these terms we had no idea. We're just mimicking pictures and images that we could see. The prayer, if you saw how we were doing it, you would say, these guys have no idea what they're doing.
You guys are crazy.
Crazy, yeah. This is like a strange prayer. But it was the best that we could do. At some point, and we were doing okay, by the way. We weren't getting all 5 prayers on time, but we were getting 2 or 3. Occasionally we would get 5. Like I said, this was a trial. And so it was becoming clear that it was a possibility. A person could manage to pray and still go to school and still go to work and still live a life and still have a relatively enjoyable experience. And you could still stop for your prayers, which meant that you could still have a spiritual connection to Allah. Means that you could still fulfill your purpose in life and still live in this world as a part of the world. Right? It wasn't like being a monk, where you have to segregate yourself from society, where you need to go and live in a monastery, or you have to live in a hermitage. You can't have a job or a wife, or no. This was something that I understood.
It's practical.
It's very practical, and it was very beautiful for me, because it meant not only can I continue to do the things that I enjoy, but I can also do that which will bring me purpose, and that is fulfilling that need to worship my Creator.
Which is innate. Yeah, before you go to the second part of your journey, I think we have to break for a moment, and then we can come back.
We'll leave.
That first part has filled me in. Now I would like to see and hear the second part of your journey, which is very interesting. And I'm sure that the viewers of TV Imaan and the listeners of Radio Imaan, they are also not enjoying, but learning a lot from Brother John Starling, Abu Ibrahim. Don't go away.
TV Imaan Tanzania. Elimu bila mipaka.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ni ujio wa Sheikh Abu Ibrahim John Starling leo katika studio za TV Imaan.
So by strengthening our love for his book, the Quran, through reading, reciting, pondering, studying, reflecting, and then of course applying the message of the Quran in our life, we will strengthen our relationship with Allah.
Sheikh Abu Ibrahim John Starling ni mhitimu wa chuo kikuu cha Kiislamu Madina, raia wa Marekani. Je, alisilimu vipi? Maisha yake kabla ya Uislamu na baada ya Uislamu. Je, anazungumziaje harakati za Uislamu nchini Marekani? Kuyajua hayo na mengine mengi, usikose kutazama na kusikiliza kipindi maalum kupitia TV na Radio Imaan leo Jumanne saa 1:15 usiku. ni mubashara.
TV Imaan Tanzania. Elimu bila mipaka.
Welcome back to this very special program, My Journey to Islam, from a very special guest, Brother Abu Ibrahim John Starling. We have been talking about his history and how he came across Islam, and then he was explaining to us his experience, the initial experience, we can say, when he was trying to find out the purpose for his life, which is according to the Quran. In Surah Ad-Dariyat, when Allah said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That is the purpose of life. So he was searching for the purpose of life, and then there were coincidences, as he has already explained. Now we are going to the second part of his journey, My Journey to Islam. Brother Abu Ibrahim. Then what happened after you were practicing now Islam? Trial and error, you are fasting, you were saying prayers, teaching yourself, self-teaching Islam. What then happened after that?
Yeah, so at this point, we would consider this chapter 2. Right?
Yes.
Chapter 1 was introductions and trial and error. Chapter 2 would be another type of introduction to the Muslim community.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned to you, the trial and error process of practicing fasting and practicing prayer, I very quickly realized that we couldn't go on our own much further, and that we needed to reach out to someone.
You reached the limit.
There was definitely, I could feel a limit myself in getting to know the ins and outs of Islam and worship and prayer. And so something hit me. Our university campus was very large. At the time I was enrolled, there were around 25,000 students.
25,000?
25,000 students, which is like a city.
One university?
Yes, one university. And so that meant that the campus life was very vibrant and very diverse. And we had many campus organizations, student organizations. So you would find like Jewish student organization, many Christian student organizations, different things that had to do with sports.
Muslim organization as well?
Muslim Student Organization, or as they call Muslim Student Association, MSA, which is a national-wide organization in the United States. So it just happened that I went on the website, the university website, looking for Muslim student something, and I came across this organization,
MSA, yeah.
MSA. They had some contact information for their president, who's someone that I am still in contact with today.
MashaAllah, you should.
I should be, and I owe them a great deal, by the way. And this is part of the second chapter.
May Allah reward him.
And it's actually a group of them, young brothers and some young sisters. And so I reached out. I believe I sent an email. It's a little bit easier to email, I didn't know what to say, but I introduced myself and I kind of gave the backstory of where I was. I sent my phone number and asked, I'd love to meet up and learn more. And they were very responsive.
MashaAllah.
They got back in touch with me immediately, and then they planned a meet and greet. And so they were very nice and sweet and easy. They said, where would you like to meet? And so I said, well, come by my dorm. They knew where the dorm was at. That was my home, so I felt safe there, Okay. And I remember very, very distinctly, I was visited by a small group of guys. The president, he was Palestinian, grew up in Kuwait. There was a freshman who was very, very active in the MSA and involved with the Dawah efforts in high schools, who was, these are American guys, of course, they'd been in the States long enough. One, he was originally born in Egypt. And there was another gentleman who was an international student from, I believe, also Palestine or Syria. I can't quite remember. And so they came. I let them come in my room, and we sat and we talked a little bit. They were very, very, very sweet. The manners is what impressed me the most. Americans, we do have a culture. We do have certain manners and etiquettes and protocols. But when you're introduced to something different, you notice differences.
Yes, sure.
You know, so what we would consider normal behavior, they were coming with something a little bit different in terms of the way they spoke, the way they interacted with me. They were very caring and concerned about me, and they were just very, very open, very normal.
Akhlaq.
Yes, they're, how are you? And they introduced themselves, what they're studying, and you know, they were studying engineering and math and science and whatever. And they asked me, well, what do you know about Islam? And I said, well, I don't know much. I know 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that there's one God. His name's Allah. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. I know that Muslims, they only believe in one God. I know that you have to pray, you have to give charity, and that's zakat. You have
Prophet
to.
Muhammad is the messenger.
Yeah, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger. He's the final messenger, which was a beautiful point for me, is accepting all of the messengers that came before, that I grew up with learning the stories of in the Bible. So it wasn't an actual rejection of anything that I had learned, but it was an evolution, if you will. It was
an inclusive.
Of course, it was kind of a, you know, the latest edition.
Latest edition of Islam.
It was like, listen, it was getting the update.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
That's how I see it now. You know, we have to update our stuff. You know, we have phones and computers, and when the update comes, we update right away because we know the update's going to bring us the best services and the latest thing.
Yeah.
And so this was what I considered to be an update.
Yeah, and even at the moment, the Muslims, we are required to update our belief. That's what the Prophet says.
Yes.
Jadidu imanakum.
Oh, very good, very good. To revive and to renew. And so this was an update for me, and I told them what I knew, and they were very happy with that, and they asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee and tea, and you know, this led to a introduction to the Muslim youth.
Okay.
And this is where things really took off for me, because
it took a turn now.
It took a turn.
For good.
For good. It was great because now I was introduced to many more people, new friends. I identified with them because they were much like I was. They just had names like Muhammad and Ahmed and Zakaria and the likes of these names. And they had, some of them had beards, which I wasn't quite used to at the time. But they were very active, and they were a community even among themselves as youth. They stuck together. They went out for coffee and tea, went out for sports and events, and they even had a traditional, what they call Jummah crew.
MashaAllah.
That they would all get together. Jummah crew is like, you know, the club, if you will, on Friday.
Okay.
And so they would all get together Friday evening after we would pray in the masjid for Salat al-Jum'ah. They would all get together on Friday evenings, and they would go somewhere particular. They would go out for tea. They would go out to hang out at someone's house. And so eventually I was adopted into the Jummah crew.
Listen, for viewers and listeners, you have to catch this point, especially for the young Muslims in colleges and schools. You can copy what those brothers were doing in America, having a Jummah crew, a get-together for Jummah in your college or in your school, whereby after Salatul Jummah, you get together, maybe for a lunch, and you can have exchange of ideas here and there, because if you don't do that, you cannot be active in your study years, and this can lose a lot of momentum when you get out of the college. So keeping yourself in touch of Islam, this is a very important apparatus, Jummah crew. Okay, brother?
Yes, so the Jummah crew eventually led to my first visit to the masjid. I had never, in all honesty, I never really knew a Muslim before this time in my life. So I'm 18, 19 years old, and I haven't officially met a Muslim. Yeah. I'm sure I met them, but not as a Muslim, just as a classmate.
Yes.
And I wasn't really in tune with religion to notice Islam and Muslims on campus or in the media. So a lot of the things that have happened over the past, you know, previously 20 years or so, even at that time, in the media with Muslims and the Muslim world, I was rather out of touch with that. It wasn't my interest at the
Even
time.
the negativity part of it.
Even the negative part. Even in the movies, you know, even at that time in the movies, there was a lot of pushback against Muslims and Arabs in particular. And so often the villain of the story would be portrayed by an Arab or a Muslim.
In Hollywood, you mean?
Yes, in Hollywood. And they would bring, you know, these actors to portray Muslims, and you would hear the adhan in the background. But even at that time, I was not tuned in enough to recognize, well, these are Muslims, these are Arabs, it was just something, you know, anything. It didn't have a face or a name.
Yeah, let's now hear about
Yes.
your experience, the first experience, and even impression when you get to the mosque.
Yes. So the first experience was this. They tell me, come to the mosque. And I'm like, sure, I guess it's time to go. Natural progression to the mosque. I go there, and believe it or not, there was a wedding. So, you know,
You went in,
that
there was a
day
wedding.
there was a wedding. And it was in the evening, so it wasn't the nikah, it wasn't the contract part, but it was the walima, the party.
Walima,
Yeah. So it's a very vibrant situation. And the people are very happy, and it's filled with people.
MashaAllah.
And this is the beautiful part. This is what really touched my heart. When I walked in, people were ready for me, ready to receive. Not everyone, but a number of key people in the masjid, they were already informed that I was coming. And they said, oh, you must be John. How are you? Good to meet you.
MashaAllah.
Yes. So this is the funny part of the story.
Okay, let's go with it.
This is the funny part. So we go into the mosque, and at this time during the walima, the mosque was being used by the men. And all of the women were nowhere to be seen. So
So this is a difference.
this is
now.
so strange to me, because I'm used to weddings and receptions where everyone's together and they're all eating and sitting and talking and
Yeah,
dancing and
Yeah, and
there's
when,
music and everything's going
and
on.
when we were going in the church, it was almost the same, mixing up between men and women. Yeah.
And I don't know any better. So I do know that there's some sensitivities, but I was not aware that there would be no women. And I was actually interested to see what Muslim women look like, because I understood there's a hijab. So I'm thinking, what is this hijab and how do they dress? And
Were you already thinking of having someone to marry?
no, I was not thinking about marrying yet. I was too young, and I was in college still. I wasn't ready for that at all.
Okay.
Just curious to see
Curiosity.
what the future would hold for me.
MashaAllah.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So I asked one of them, I said, hey, listen, where are all the ladies? Just normal question for me. They go,
What did he respond?
they go, oh no. Listen, and they responded in a very wise way.
MashaAllah.
Yes, very wise. You know, because they could have become offended by that question. You know, in some cultures, if you ask about your mother or your sister or your wife,
That's true.
they could be offended and they could say, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Right? So they have to acknowledge who they're talking to respond correctly. Or they could say, oh, we don't have women here. We don't let the women here. And they could turn me away.
MashaAllah.
But
That's
they
very
said,
important.
yeah,
Very
this is
important.
very
Knowing the background of the one you are talking with, the listeners and viewers, know the background of the one you are talking with, his culture and his environment is coming from. You can know the best way to respond to his curiosity, his questions. And this is a beautiful part of Islam dawah.
Yes, so, and the dawah was, he said to me, he said, you do know that there are some sensitivities in Islam, that we're not open and free mixing with each other. We're worried about their modesty and our modesty, their dignity and ours. So we've arranged a separate private hall just for the women, so that they can enjoy themselves without having to worry about men looking at them while they're enjoying their party and so on and so forth. And so I was like, oh, look, they get special treatment. They have VIP treatment, the women.
First. That is women first.
That's the way he portrayed it to me. So I said, okay, no problem. So then we moved on, and it was prayer time. And I joined in with the people there. My friends from the Jummah crew, they said, look, if you don't know what you're doing, don't worry about it. Just watch someone beside you or in front of you and follow along, and you'll be okay.
You haven't pronounced the Shahada.
Not yet. Not yet. They were not pressuring me
That's
at this
very
point. And they let me stay for a couple of months. It must have been a month or 2 months.
They wanted it to be natural. To you.
Natural. And they wanted me to be convinced. And they wanted it to be on my own accord, not to pressure me. Because, you know, in Islam, we don't pressure people
Yes,
and
like
force
Raha
them.
fi din,
Exactly.
Like Raha fi din.
We
No
will,
compulsion.
we'll help them along the way. But at the end of it, You have to make your own decision, and you have to be responsible for yourself. And they let me do that, alhamdulillah. And so, like I said, I went on for some time. Not to say that they weren't adamant about answering my questions. They would always engage me in conversation. But what they did was they made me feel welcome as a part of their community, as a part of their group, their friends' Jummah crew, and that type of a thing. And so it was very welcoming. It was very touching. You know, it's hard to break into social groups. You know, you have a group of friends that have been friends for 10 or 15 years. It's hard for a newcomer to come in and feel welcomed. And they were able to do that to make me feel like I had been there with them for years. So eventually they came to me and they said, listen, they said, John, you're a great guy. We've gotten to know you. We've had some good times together. But if you remember, you reached out to us about Islam. And you wanted us to help you along your journey to learning about Islam. So we are here to ask you if you have any other questions. And if you do, we'll stay with you until they're all answered. If we don't know them, we'll go to our Shaykh, the Imam of the community. He was a scholar. He was very, very well-versed in the Quran and the Sunnah. In fiqh, he was trained in Hanafi fiqh. Because the community was largely from that part of the world.
Pakistan,
He, however, was Arab, by the way. He was originally from, I believe, Syria, by way of Jordan, and then came to the States. But he took an interest in learning Hanafi fiqh because the community that he served was largely... Yes.
It's the beauty of Islam.
Yes, and he was a resource, a true resource. And he stayed in that community for about 25 years until he retired.
MashaAllah.
And so they said to me, listen, if you have any questions, we'll answer. If not, then I think maybe you should take some time to think about what it is that you want to do. He said, look, we don't want to break our friendship with you, but we came together for a very specific purpose. You know, we have many friends, and you have your friends. We have our life, and you have our life. If you want to accept Islam, we welcome you with open arms. If you don't want to, no problem. We'll go our ways, and we'll see each other in class and in the campus. So I said, this is the key about dawah is you don't want to be too forceful, but you don't want to be too lenient. You have to help steer the person to where it is that they want to go. And so every once in a while, we need a little bit of a push. And this is where they gave me that push. They said, so I think now's the time. Because I didn't have any other questions. I said, no, I don't think I have any other questions. I said, well, what do you want to do? And I had already been praying. I'd already been going to the masjid. It became very natural, a transition. I said, well, let's do it.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, I'm ready to become Muslim. And you know, actually if you study fiqh, you will learn that when someone actually begins to adopt the practices of Islam and the prayers, you can consider them Muslim. Right? Because they've already begun to adopt the prayers and the ways of the Muslims, so you can consider them Muslim. However, they wanted an official statement and a shahada, declaration of faith. And so I said, I'm ready to go whenever you are. So they said, listen, what would be the best thing to do is, Eid al-Adha is right around the corner. It was days away. They said, this will be our biggest holiday and the largest gathering of our community. And if you don't mind, we'd love to have you do it in front of all of them. And so I said, I actually felt indebted to them. And I thought I owed them at least whatever they wanted for all they'd given me. So I said, sure. I didn't understand the impact of it, but I realized it would be a huge thing for the community, especially on that day. And so I remember getting ready. They coached me in the shahada, how to say it, so that I wasn't embarrassed by mispronouncing the words.
Yeah, by the way, what they did, yeah, of course they wanted that, but actually saying shahada is something which shouldn't be delayed, even 1 minute.
Of course. But you know, actually then I said the shahada that night with them.
Oh, mashallah.
Yes. They said, you say it now for us, and then we'll give an official for the public one. Yes.
That's what
yes. So they said, so I did say the shahada that evening, and then we waited a couple of days. They made some arrangements, and believe it or not, during that time in Raleigh, North Carolina, that's where I was going to school and living, there was one central mosque.
Okay.
And it was a very, very large community, and the Eid prayer was attended by about 2,500 to 3,000 people.
2,000?
Yes, to 3,000.
Even in some of our cities here,
Yes.
people don't go to that number. 2,000?
Yes, 2,000.
That is in America.
Yes.
You as the listeners, you got to understand what he's saying. 2,000 Muslims saying Eid prayers in America. This is not in Dar es Salaam or in Morogoro. Okay.
Yeah, and this is just one city. This is, you find that there'll be congregations much larger than that.
Even larger than that?
Larger, especially when you go up to the northeast, for example, when you get up into Pennsylvania, into Philadelphia, into New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. This is where you'll find that the Muslims are around 1 million in number.
So we Muslims, we have to change our perception, because most people view America as being an Islamic country, totally. They don't know there are Muslim brothers and sisters there. And even that great number, even if there was one Muslim there,
of course.
Still it matters.
So when you're praying and you're making dua about America, don't
Sometimes
forget that we're there.
America.
Yeah, don't forget we're there.
Yes, that's the most important point.
Yeah, because if you're going to be directing your emotions and you're going to be asking Allah for something in regards to America, don't forget your brothers and sisters, we're there. And we appreciate positive prayers for us and our safety and security and our well-being. Yeah.
Okay, can you go on?
Yes, of course. So there I was. We finished the prayer, Eid al-Adha. We finished Salat al-Eid. They had me come up to the front of the congregation. The Imam was there. The assistant Imam, who was a very, very dear person in my life, he was there, and he's the one that facilitated the Shahada, and he had me repeat after him. And so I said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And then we translated it. And after that, the place was filled with takbirat. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
What a great day.
And it was overwhelming for me. I was blown away. That day, after that moment, I received more hugs and kisses than any day I've ever had in my life. Yes. Yes, because I had so many people coming to me, giving me hugs, warm embraces, kissing me on the cheek, which was strange for me, by the way, at the time. Ooh. Yeah, but I just let it go. They were hugging me and embracing me and congratulating. Some of them were crying. They were in tears. They were so happy.
For one person entering into Islam,
yes,
people were crying.
A person they didn't know. And they were so happy and overwhelmed with joy, they were crying. To the point that someone came to me and said, listen, brother, if you want to get married, I'll give you my daughter in marriage. Yeah.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, could you imagine? I of course said, I didn't know what to say.
Yeah, you didn't know.
I mean, if you give me your coat or your jacket or something, I could know, okay, thank you very much, it's not okay. I said, I don't know about that, thank you. He's like, okay, khalas. And he left. But anyway, that was how I entered into Islam. And I will never forget that day. And more importantly than that day, I will never forget the brothers and sisters that were there for me in that journey. And so whenever I tell the story, I always have to mention them, at least an indicator. I don't mention them by name because I didn't take their permission, but I give an indicator to them in the story and a reminder to them that, the Prophet ﷺ, he has encouraged people to invite. And he said, for example, "Ad-dal al khair kafa'ili." The one that points another to good will be as if they've done it themselves. And also, if you were to guide someone by your own hand, then Allah will give you what is better than that under the sun, or give you better than humr al-ni'am.
Then that is a journey. It's a journey of Brother John Starling, Abu Ibrahim, to Islam. From the unknown to the known. It's the most important journey a human being can make. A human being has been to the moon, and they boast of being to the moon. The first man, and there will be the last man who landed into the moon, whom I was watching today in the BBC that he passed away, Mr. Jane. He was an American. The last man to set foot on the moon. They made journeys to the moon. But this is the most important journey for the human being, a journey back to Allah, or the journey towards Allah. I am with Brother John Starling Abu Ibrahim, and we are in a program, My Journey to Islam. And he has just finished the second part of the most important journey of his life. And may Allah make his remaining journey to be more blessed than the first one, and to all of us. Now my question when we were talking is, you are still called John Starling. And most people when they revert to Islam, they enter into Islam, they change their name.
Yes.
Why didn't you change your name?
This is a question I get all the time.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I did change my name.
You did change your name?
Originally, I changed my name at the advice of the community.
Okay.
A couple of guys, they suggested, and I was happy to do so as a part of my identity.
Okay.
So they gave me a list of names, of
It's
Islamic
used, that's how it
names,
is, yes.
Islamic names, Arabic names.
Arabic names.
Yes.
Supposedly Islamic, but
Yeah, Arabic
names.
names that have, they have a place in Islam, of course, there's no
Yeah,
doubt.
that's true.
There are many names that are have become traditionally Muslim names. You take the names of the prophets, you take the names of the companions, you take those types of names, especially names that have to do with Allah.
Yeah.
Abdullah, for example, Abdurrahman to the end of it. Yes, and so they gave me a list of names, and I chose a name. And
What was the name?
I chose the name Isa.
Isa.
Yeah. And this is a name that is often given to converts, especially white converts, because in America, Jesus is also often portrayed as being a white man.
Okay.
He has very European features, and sometimes this is done as kind of a symbolic thing to say, look, we worship, we love Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, but we don't worship him, and so a convert from Christianity we call Isa. Yeah. And so I did go by that name for a number of years while I was in that community. About a year or two, I went by that name, Isa.
Yeah.
And I told, believe it or not, I told my mother. I kept my parents involved in the process.
Okay.
I kept them informed of what I was doing.
That's a very important thing.
Yes, I knew that it would be a big change, and the change continued to grow as I grew as a Muslim. But I let them know what I was doing, and they were very open at the time. They were very, parents have a huge challenge with their children as they grow up because they're trying to find themselves.
That's true.
And they're trying to learn who they are and who they want to be, and children go through many phases as they grow.
Sure.
One day I want to be a doctor, one day an engineer, one day I want to be a sheikh, one day I want to be a rock and roll star, I don't know.
Yeah.
So this was one of those perhaps phases, and my parents were very easygoing with me. They said, as long as you're happy, then do what you want. As long as you're not hurting someone or yourself, then that's fine. And I told my mother about the name change. And she said, listen, if you're going to be called Isa by your friends, that's fine, but don't tell your father.
Okay.
Because John is my father's name.
Oh.
We have a tradition, is that, it's a very old tradition, by the way, that you name your children after you. And so I'm John the Third.
Okay.
So my father's John Jr., and my grandfather's John Sr. And you can see the kings of the past,
Yes,
King Henry, they have the same,
King
the second,
George
the
the
third, the
second,
fourth, the fifth, like
and
this.
The fifth and so on.
Yeah, and so it was a tradition of ours.
John Bush,
Yes.
George Bush.
Yes,
first,
there
and
was
the
we had a
second.
president, George Bush, Sr. and Jr., of course. Who would forget?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she said to me, just don't tell your father because it may break his heart.
Okay.
And I didn't think a lot about it at the time because I was so involved in my journey and new religion. So I said, okay, it doesn't matter to me. I wasn't living at home at the time anyway. I was in college. And so I went by that name. Eventually, the next part of my journey was graduating from college.
Okay.
And then seeking an opportunity to learn about Islam.
That's
Beyond.
where we learn the challenges you met.
Yes.
That's good.
So seeking an opportunity to learn beyond just the local masjid there and the youth groups and the halaqat and things, I wanted to go further. I was very passionate about my faith, and so I was advised to apply to the University of Medina, Islamic University of Medina in Saudi Arabia. And I did do that, and that became my goal, was to get accepted either to that university or the one in Mecca, al-Qura.
al-Qura.
Yes, and those were the two major universities that were known to take students internationally, and they provided a great opportunity giving you plane airfare, plane tickets, and they gave you your tuition was covered, your living expenses, and so on and so forth. And it wasn't until I enrolled in college and noticed that the professors started calling me by John, which was the name in my passport, because I hadn't legally changed my name. And not one of them, or I can't remember one of them, asking me, what's your Islamic name?
MashaAllah.
They called me John.
MashaAllah.
And so it's written, you know, in Arabic, they have the tradition of your name, the son of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, like this. And so they called me John.
John.
Your
father is also
My
John.
father's John. So they called me John, or Jun in the Arabic language.
Jun,
they have to change it, Arabize it a little bit. Jun, yeah. So I was always called this Jun. And eventually I would discover that changing the name was something that the Prophet ﷺ would do, but on a rare occasion. When the name of the Muslim was in contradiction to the tenets of their faith. So during that time, they would have names like Abdul Shams, the servant or worshiper of the sun. And in this case, the Prophet ﷺ, he would change the name to be Abdullah or something of that nature. If they had other names like Sa'id, someone that's happy, or they have a name like Abu Bakr, or they have a name like Omar, he left the names as they were. And there's a lesson to be learned in this, and that was the lesson I had to learn, which takes me back to what my mother said. Don't tell your father.
It will
break his heart. Right? So,
and breaking one's parent's heart is a very, very serious, offense, provided that it is done un-Islamically. If Islam didn't teach that thing, then breaking the parent's heart is a very, very great crime. I think you realize it good.
This has been the greatest challenge I've faced in accepting Islam, is trying to, and I haven't always passed the test, to be honest with you. I haven't always done the best I could do. And a lot of that was based on a lack of knowledge. How to deal with my parents, how to deal with my family members as a Muslim. I mean, my parents, they're great parents. I have a relationship with them until this day, and we try to keep the relationship as positive as possible, and we try to connect on things that we can connect with. And there's a lot of things we have in common, and we come together. I mean, family's family, it's a natural bond. You only have one father, one mother,
You can't reinvent.
You can't replace that. You can't replace that. You can't get new parents. So you have to do the best you can.
Yeah, most of the people I've met who converted to Islam, one of the greatest challenges was within their families.
Yes.
Their mothers, their fathers, if they were married, maybe husband or the
Of course,
wife.
I've heard the stories.
You were very, very, very lucky.
But listen, it's not just people that accept Islam, but it's also Muslims and families that are not practicing Islam.
That's true.
And they begin to practice Islam.
Then they meet the challenge from within.
And they find the
their
same
family.
challenges.
That's true.
They find the same opposition and challenges, and it may be even worse, I found at times. Some of the challenges that a Muslim will face with their Muslim family, the challenges may be more difficult, because the child is now trying to implement a certain practice of Islam, a certain approach, to their understanding perhaps. And their parents may have a different understanding. And they say to their children, look, I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this for 50 years. You're 20.
You're clever than me.
Who do you think you are? And the challenges, they get very difficult. But this was my greatest challenges, is trying to balance embracing my faith, but still maintaining the ties with my family. Because, what happens essentially, and what happened for me was, a lot of the American tradition revolves around Christianity. The holidays are huge in America. And even though the holidays, by and large, have become more commercial than they are religious.
But still they've got importance.
So they're still very much based in Christian tradition. And as Muslims, when it comes to these religious holidays, we're not permitted to practice them and take part in them. We can't go to Easter celebrations. We can't go to Christmas celebrations. We have our holidays. Our Eid. We have our holidays. And so this is where it became very difficult, to go to my parents now and say, listen, I love you, I respect you,
but I'm not
I can't be with you in Christmas. I can't displease and anger the God that created both of us and made you my parents and me your son. It was very challenging because on those holidays, the extended family comes together. And in America today, you find that families have become very disconnected. Not all families, but many families are disconnected by geography.
Geography.
Yes.
Okay.
So one has a job in one city and the other has found work in another city or has moved to another state.
So the only time to reconnect is during the holidays.
Exactly the problem. Because
Then
those are
if
the
you are
times,
not, if you are not seeing there this year,
Yes.
you've been broken away from the family.
that's the way it appears. Because America, as we mentioned, is one of the richest nations in the world. They are such because they work all of the time. So the only time they have off work and the only time they feel they can take away from their careers is on the holidays when they have official time off. And that's when they visit family.
Yeah, let's move to another thing, and this might be very interesting to our viewers and listeners, that you have already picked up some. How did you view Muslim before and after becoming a Muslim? What was your view towards Muslim before you became a Muslim and after becoming a Muslim? Did the Muslims, when you became a Muslim, did the Muslims meet your expectations as you were viewing them before? Or you found, just like other people say, I found Islam in one part and Muslim quite in a different part.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've heard this before many times, and I've thought about this a lot in my experience. Honestly, I went into Islam and the Muslim community with zero expectations. I had no expectations. I didn't know what I was going to encounter. I understood some basic theory of Islam, but I'm a person, I'm practical, I hope. I grew up in the church, and I know that the religion is the religion, and the followers, they are only trying to follow the religion. And they will make the mistakes, and they will be humans as they are along the way. So I had zero expectations going into it. I can't say that all of the time I was happy with what I saw. Of course, there are moments of disappointment.
Especially after you graduated from Medina, because you realize that
Well,
most
actually, yeah, that process was a thing in and of itself. You know, going to Medina. People have this idea that they're going to go to Medina, the city of the Prophet. They'll find the companions still there.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah. They only know Medina through TV, where they have a picture of the prayer while everyone's standing in Salah in the Masjid Nabawi. But they don't see the outside world where there's business and there's families and there's the grocery store and the marketplace. There's traffic accidents, there's speeding infractions, there's regular life that
Just
happens.
regular life.
Yeah,
it
regular
is.
life. Yeah. They just happen to be Muslim. Are they good Muslims? Are they bad Muslims? Are they good Muslims that have made a mistake at the time? Of course. You have to expect that from us. You have to expect that. I'm not saying that we should lower our standards to the point where we are losers, but we have to be forgiving with each other to the point that we don't become disenfranchised with the Muslim community. And it's all negative. I like to take a positive view and say, look, there are a lot of positive qualities that Muslims have. We do have a lot of room for improvement, but still, we have a lot to offer the world. We have a tremendous amount to offer the world of positivity.
MashaAllah.
This is the thing.
MashaAllah.
Right now in our time, very challenging for the Muslims around the world, in the United States, out of the United States, even right here in this country, we have challenges. We're under the magnifying glass. We're under the spotlight.
Media and the rest.
Everything. And sometimes we feel like we're unwanted. We need to realize that that side, if you will, needs us more than they know it. They need us and they don't even know. One day, inshallah, one day, if we continue to strive and engage them in conversation and dialogue and be good neighbors and be good co-workers and be good Muslims and show them Islam, I'm certain that they will thank us for not running away, for not letting them push us away. We have to stick our ground and continue to do what we know is right.
Jazakallah khair. Now, Let's go for a break, a short break, and then when we come, we will conclude our program. This is Brother John Starling, Abu Ibrahim, and our program today is My Journey to Islam, the journey of the brother we are having here at our Radio Imaan studio and TV Imaan studio, right here in Morogoro. Please be with us.
TV Imaan Tanzania. Elimu bila mipaka.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ni ujio wa Sheikh Abu Ibrahim John Starling leo katika studio za TV Imaan.
So by strengthening our love for his book, the Quran, through reading, reciting, pondering, studying, reflecting, and then of course applying the message of the Quran in our life, we will strengthen our relationship with Allah.
Sheikh Abu Ibrahim John Starling ni mhitimu wa chuo kikuu cha Kiislamu Madina, raia wa Marekani. Je, alisilimu vipi? Maisha yake kabla ya Uislamu na baada ya Uislamu. Je, anazungumziaje harakati za Uislamu nchini Marekani? Kuyajua hayo na mengine mengi, usikose kutazama na kusikiliza kipindi maalum kupitia TV na Radio Imaan leo Jumanne saa 1:15 usiku. Ni mubashara.
Here we go. Welcome again. We are having Brother John Starling here at our studio, TV and Radio Imaan in Morogoro. We are discussing about his journey to Islam. And now we are in the concluding moments of our program today. My question to you, Brother John Starling, is what advice do you give to Muslims in general, and especially to Muslim youth, with these challenges now Islam is facing?
This is a very, very difficult question to answer.
That's true.
But I will certainly do my best. My advice to Muslims in general, and then I'll give something specific to the youth, which I think is very important. First is, as Muslims in general, each and every one of us need to find that which resonates with them in Islam. What I mean by that is, a lot of times we'll have these types of interviews with new Muslims. And we can learn a lot from these types of dialogues. And a lot of times people are looking for some spark in these conversations, in the stories of converts. They want a spark because they too want to feel something in regards to their faith.
Okay.
But the reality is that my spark is mine. It might not be yours.
It's unique to you.
Yes, my story is my story. And the value that I find in Islam is specific to me. You have to find the value in your faith for yourself. I can't do it for you.
That's true.
Right? You have to be eager enough and engaged enough in the process of the journey to Allah that you can make your own investment like I made in mine. I had to make huge investments and sacrifices to where I have valued my faith beyond everything else. And that's important. That's one of the greatest advices is make sacrifices for your faith. Sacrifice your time, sacrifice your energy, sacrifice your skills.
Yes. Yeah.
Many of us have skills we can offer.
That's true.
We have expertise that we can offer the Muslim community, whether in terms of giving dawah, running organizations, helping those that are in need.
Yeah.
Across the board, there are many opportunities to invest our time and to increase the value of our faith. We all need to be engaged in the process to find our own spark or our own aha moment, if you will, in the faith. Yes. That's in general. For the Muslim youth, and I deal with the Muslim youth all the time. That's been my forte, if you will, for the last 5 or 6 years in America, is to deal with young people, young Muslims. And I deal with them in many different scenarios over a variety of issues. But there's one thing that sticks out in my mind all of the time, a person that is young, that is, take advantage of your time while you're young. Take advantage of the time that you have. This is one of the most spoiled blessings, is time. And when you're young, you have an abundance of time, especially if you're not married, you don't have children, but you're still a student, you're an aspiring career person. You need to sit down and be honest with the time that you have and do what is going to benefit you. This is hard for young people because young people, that age is where the desires are strong to just enjoy things. And I'm not saying don't enjoy. No, go have fun in the right way, but also do things that will be a benefit to you. Benefit now and invest in the future in your life, and it will take you places you could never imagine if you take advantage of your time, right? And one of the best ways you can take advantage of your time, a portion of it should be dedicated to learning your faith.
Learning the faith.
Learning the faith is important. At a young age, be engaged in the process of learning. Take some time to read the Quran, to memorize what you can of the Quran. Sit with your elders, sit with your teachers, sit with your mashayikh, the scholars of your city, of your country, of your local masjid, and take some advice from them, take some lessons from them. It's not going to take all of your time, but it's certainly something that you should put forward. That would be some of the advice, among many pieces of advice I could offer, but that sticks out in my mind the most.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Then there is a final word from you to all of us. It has been a very bright evening, and I will cherish it in my life. And I hope even the viewers and listeners have been enjoying this program. The final word from you.
The final word, well, I'll say this. I have been in Dar es Salaam for the last 6 months, roughly 6 months. This is the first time I've actually visited even the continent of Africa, let alone the coast here. And there's all this perception of going to Africa. In America, we have a perception about Africa that it's very poor. The people are living in the worst conditions. And there is some reality to that. There's poverty in Africa. There's poverty in America. But the poverty in Africa is very difficult to deal with, I'm sure. It's very difficult to see at times. But I will say this. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in general, I have been delighted. I have been overwhelmed with joyful experiences. I have fallen in love with this place. I've fallen in love with the people here. The Muslim community here is, there's a lot that they can do, I believe, to strengthen themselves as individuals and more importantly as communities. They need to focus on finding ways to come together, to work together, to unite together. And I think that unity needs to be based upon sound knowledge. It needs to be based on a unified approach to Islam, if at all possible, at least some fundamentals. We need to be able to see those types of things. But yeah, it's been very positive. And as you mentioned, I am leaving. I'll be leaving in a few days. I'll be going back home to resume my position there in my community. And in all honesty, I expected to spend a lot more time here. I hope to have stayed in Dar es Salaam or the area for a number of years. I wanted to learn the language here, learn more about the culture. So I feel like my heart has been broken into 100 pieces at least, having to part. But yeah, those would be my final words. Just, it's a very unique place. So it's been a privilege. It's been a true privilege. It's been an honor to be here. It's been a privilege for me to join you here, TV Imaan, here at the Islamic Foundation in Tanzania. Jazakallah khair.
Allahumma ameen. With that, we conclude our program. This has been a delight evening. My journey to Islam. This was an interactive interview, a program between me, Sheikh Muhammad Isa, with Brother John Starling, Abu Ibrahim. He has fed us, really, fed us with many things, but the last ones he finished with were not the least, they were the most important. The Muslim in Tanzania have to find a way to come together, work together, and unite. And the one thing I noticed was about what we have about America. We Muslims, all over the world, not only Tanzanians, we need to change our paradigms. The paradigm shift should be there. That when we talk about America, about UK, about Western countries, we should always remember they are our Muslim brothers and sisters, or Muslim brothers like John Starling, with whom I am finishing this program. Welcome again to TV Imaan, Radio Imaan, and Islamic Foundation. It has been a nice thing to host you here.
I appreciate
Thank you very much. And with this, we end our program. Jazakumullahu khaira لحسن متابعتكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته والعفو منكم.
TV Imaan Tanzania. Elimu bila mipaka.